joining. I'm Lisa Cook, ISACA's IT GRC Professional Practices Lead. Joining me today is a very special guest, Chris Madeksho. She is a cybersecurity analyst at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. Chris is joining us today to chat about her article, Managing Human Risk Requires More Than Just Awareness Training. Chris, it's great to have you join me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Chris, can I take a moment to ask you to introduce yourself to our audience? Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure. So my job title is cybersecurity analyst. I am a member of our GRC team, governance, risk, and compliance. So when all is said and done, I do risk management, I do policy management, and then I'm doing the awareness and training, which is what I was hired to do about 7 years ago now here at the university. And then as things happen, the job titles change and more duties are put assigned to me. So what my passion is, though, is the awareness and training and getting people to understand what cybersecurity is, why they should be concerned about it, and how to make the university safer and also themselves and their families and their personal lives.
Excellent, excellent. And this is a very interesting article. I recommend everybody read it. But can you tell me what inspired you to write this?
Well, as a member of the GRC team and the awareness and training person, which is just a third of my job, human risk is something that should be identified and not just put off to the side. We have, depending on your organization, you probably have some compliance-driven training. Whether you have to, healthcare with HIPAA, FERPA here at the university with student data, PCI for credit card data. I could go on with all the acronyms, but there's compliance training that is required. And so if you just check a box off on compliance training to say, okay, I'm going to make everybody watch these videos once a year, and then I'm going back to my other job and everybody else goes back to their job, then you really don't help manage that human risk and protect the organization. So especially if your compliance training says, well, we have to deal with this subject, and you have 20 things and 20 videos people to see, they're not going to learn unless there's reinforcement.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And you've talked about human risk. It's in the title of your article. Tell me a little bit more about what is meant by human risk and why should everybody be concerned about it?
Well, the Verizon data breach report has come out every year. In 2022, they identified that 82% of breaches included the human element. For 2023, the report came out in May, and the percentage went down to 74%, but that's still an astronomical number that humans are allowing breaches to happen in some way, shape, or form. So with that being such a high risk and a high number, human risk needs to be addressed, identified. And to start a human risk assessment, you start with a risk assessment. Risk is the idea of the likelihood of an event happening and the impact that would happen if the event occurred. So you add the human factor to that, and then you start wondering about what it is that I need to deal with. Are we getting emails that are phishes inundated in our environment? Do we need to worry about insider threat? Are we a social media company that a lot of our communications is on social media? So our people need to know the appropriate way of doing social media. So it starts with the risk assessment to see what your high risks are. And then you train and you educate your people on those high risks to get more bang for your buck.
Oh, absolutely. And I would think that particularly with the news today, cyber risks and data being breached would be up there in terms of the risks that organizations would find themselves identifying during that assessment process.
Yeah, and so I'm at a university. We are the UT Health Science Center. So there is we call it the trifecta of high risk. Government, we're a public university. Healthcare, we train the doctors and nurses and residents, pharmacists, dentists, continuing on. And then we're the finance people, because I don't think anyone goes to become a doctor without having some type of student aid. So we are the trifecta. We're government, we're healthcare, and we're financial aid. So that being said, we are a major target.
And I would say that data breach would be really high up there. So when we start thinking about particularly, again, another hot topic being AI enabled tools and the sophistication of these phishing attacks. You mentioned phishing, deep fakes, the kind of misinformation that could be out there. Talk to me a little about what's happening in higher education around that and
Well,
how
yeah.
humans pose a risk with that. Excuse
Okay,
me.
yeah, because in higher ed, the first thing everyone talked about AI, they were worried about students using AI to write, stuff. We don't have that problem really at the Health Science Center because there are people doing their own research. You just can't say, "Hey, ChatGPT, write this, thing about diabetes." But when we're looking at AI now in the cybersecurity area, realize that both sides are going to use AI. The bad actors are going to use AI to make their phishing emails look a lot more legit, because we used to say, "Oh, look for poor grammar. You can see that these people, English is not their first language." Now with AI, they don't have that problem anymore. It looks real, just like deep fakes. They look real. So the takeaway for everyone is be suspicious of everything. Sort of sucks on trust, but that's what happens. On the good side, though, for somebody who may not have a communications background, you've been stuck with this job of you need to tell people all this stuff, and you're the technical person, so you talk tech language. You could talk great to IT folks, but for the financial person, the HR people, your lawyers, they are, AI can help you translate what you want to say in a way that people will actually hear and listen and learn from.
Absolutely. And I would think that, you said that you have the background for training as well and awareness, as well as policy. So I would think organizations, they've traditionally used periodic training and awareness programs to address these human risks.
Mhm.
But your position is that we need to go beyond these programs and developing risk mitigation strategies. Why is that? Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Okay, well, because when, like I say, if you're checking a box in compliance to say everyone's been trained, yay, we're good. Wait, we're not going to worry about it for another year. And then you put out policies, administrative policies that says this is your acceptable use policy. This is your code of conduct. This is how you're supposed to use email. And then but you don't integrate that with the best practices. We do this because we just don't tell you must do this. The reason you're doing that, you must use multi-factor authentication because we told you to. No, you use multi-factor authentication so that we protect the data in the university and take it to your personal life. If your bank doesn't use multi-factor authentication on your business, on your accounts, find another bank.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what would be the first step in managing this risk? Is it the self-assessment program? What's the first step in managing this human risk?
Yeah. So first step is a self-assessment, or as you say, a risk assessment. You find out what your major risks are. So how do you do that? For me, it's engaging with the university, some people, also specifically the security ops team, because they're the ones that are getting fishes reported to them. They are the ones that I can go and say, "Hey, what's your incident response has looked like for the last quarter? What are you dealing with? Are you dealing with data leakage? Are you dealing with insider threat? Are you dealing with any type of data security?" So finding what those risks are, then you can develop a program to say this is what people need to learn. And it might be just as simple as like every month or every quarter you have a theme. We're talking about insider threat in the second quarter of 2023, so let's talk about that. It's just not malicious behavior, it could be negligent behavior. So I know I'm preaching because anytime I have a chance, I try to get some preaching stuff in, teaching,
Right.
not preaching, but instead of just once a year and people forgetting it, 7 months down the road, oh, I forgot about that. It's the same thing with like policies. You write a policy and people are like, oh, I read that when I first started. I can't tell you exactly anything what it says anymore. People are not going to go every month and review and read every policy again.
Absolutely. And you talked about code of conduct and things of that nature. Are those the ways that organizations can incentivize positive, behavior so that the proper humans are doing the right thing because they've been properly trained and incentivized?
Yes, I am very much, a positive person instead of the negative person. You use the carrot, not the stick. Because if you use the stick, you get this negative connotation. And so people are not going to want to report that, oh my gosh, I clicked on a link. Oh, maybe nobody noticed because I don't want people to yell at me. We want people to positive attitude. Oh, thank you. Yes, you did bad. You clicked on that link, but it's a lot easier to take care of a problem if we knew it 30 minutes in instead of 30 days. You're doing the right thing. So, a lot of positive attitudes, a lot of open trust, freedom, so that we're approachable. We don't want to be the people that say no all the time. No, you can't download this. No, you can't do that. Let's find the way to do it the most secure way instead of thinking of, we're the mean people. No, we're not. But we want to be very approachable and positive instead of that negative connotation.
Absolutely. And not so much that this is negative, but there are other mechanisms, right, by which we can be alerted or identify some of these issues, these insider threats, as you talked about earlier. Definitely. And talk to me a little bit about how whistleblower policies might play a role.
Yeah, whistleblowers are sort of interesting because they're both positive and negative. If a whistleblower, made the news because of some government agency, and now the people are like, oh, yes, we should rally around them. But then if it's a whistleblower in your organization, you're like, why are you spreading rumors about us? Why are you rocking the boat? So whistleblowers, though, there's a reason for calling them that. If there is something going on that is wrong, inappropriate, against the mission and goals of your organization, it needs to be addressed, whether that's a security issue, whether that's an operational issue, a finance issue. So whistleblowers I want everyone to look at whistleblowers as a positive because they are the ones that's going to make the organization better and not just hide under a rock. No, nothing happens good if it's just hidden under a rock.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. I got to thinking a little bit as we're talking about good cyber hygiene, and how does that help to reinforce cyber awareness, compliance, preparedness?
Yes. So yeah, thank you for putting preparedness in there instead of just awareness. That's one of my goals here at the university is making people prepared to respond instead of just aware of things. But cyber hygiene, to make people interested in it instead of just, oh, that's just that Chris lady that's talking again. You make it personal. Like I mentioned about somebody in their bank and using MFA. If you just say, oh, well, you need to do this for our organization, instead of saying, hey, at your personal level, you need to protect your accounts. You need to protect your home router. You need to you understand about security controls for your kids when they're online. You need to worry about your parents and the robocalls and your grandparents and your elderly neighbors that are a vulnerable threat to telephone scams. If you make it personal and they become the security culture, then they understand the why for it and they protect themselves in their home environment, they're going to bring it back to the organization. Because I have a strong password on my bank account, I understand why I need a strong password on my business email. And so things like that, when you talk about cyber hygiene, you really just want to make them understand the reason for security. I do this in my talks all the time, and I have my hands up here. We have security on one side, we have convenience on the other. The two will never meet. Things that are secure are never going to be convenient, and things that are convenient probably are never going to be secure. But going back to risk management, every person needs to decide where on this scale where they feel comfortable being with convenience and security, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Now, you mentioned security culture. So that prompts me to ask, whose responsibility is it to foster a security culture within the organization?
That's a very good question because there have been arguments here at the university, and then when I look in blogs and different communities, because we'll have people that say, "Hey, security people, if you do your job, I shouldn't have to worry about security." And I was like, "Well, okay, I get your point, but my opinion is security culture and security awareness is everyone's responsibility. Again, you take it back to that personal level. I am not going to make sure that you change your password on your home router. I am not going to make sure that all of your personal accounts have different and strong passwords. I care about the university in that area, but you're going to have to take responsibility for both your personal stuff and your data here at the university.
How are we going to pay for all of this? That might be a question that's on everybody's minds.
That's always on everyone's mind. The budget, I have no budget, you know. So in the article, I mentions time, talent, and treasure, that you need all three to get a good preparedness program to the next maturity level besides just compliance. So what we're looking at is when you talk about treasure, I'll go from the back to the front. Treasure, a budget. You need to be able to set aside funds to develop a program just like you would for anything else. You know, you have vulnerability management and you have scans and you do this. Again, if 74% of data breaches have the human element, you should be able to spend some money on the risk analysis and the mitigation plan for human risk. If you don't have a budget, you'd be surprised how many, start Googling, because there are so many free videos that you can find either on YouTube, or some companies offer free videos, free posters, and then join a community where you can get ideas. That backs up to talent. This job might be given to somebody as other duties as assigned. Figure out the program for this year. We don't have to worry about compliance anymore. Go back to your regular job. You need somebody that has the talent to be able to talk to people, to make them understand what it is about cybersecurity and how to use it. And even if you don't have that, that's where AI comes in. A coworker of mine actually asked ChatGPT to explain cybersecurity using a 90s hip hop theme. And it did, and it was really good. If you don't have the talent, you have to at least have the capability of thinking outside the box. And then it comes back to the first one of time. You need, whether you're the manager or, if you have a team that this is part of their job duties, you need to give them time to develop a plan. You just can't say, oh, by next week, we need everybody trained. No, if we're going to have monthly themes or quarterly themes, we need to know, are we going to give a video out? If we're going to put a poster up, are we going to use digital signage? What are we going to do to get our theme and our education and our awareness across to everyone? So time, talent, and treasure.
Absolutely. And, this idea of trust as well has come up. And ISACA has our digital trust ecosystem framework. We have a trust factor that speaks to managing human interaction with the technology. It speaks to continuous training, assessing skill sets and competencies, and associated gaps. Those are among the recommended activities. And it brings me to the question: how can an organization balance the employee trust while also tracking risky employee activities?
By transparency. You let people know what it is that you are doing. You keep sensitive information, confidential and secure, but you let people know, hey, you know what? We monitor emails. We do this for the protection of the university and also for yourself. That's why you don't get 10,000 phishing emails a day, or spam or scam emails. you let them know that there is an insider threat program, so that you can, if you see something, say something. How many times have people heard that? But go back to the whistleblower thing. If you see something, let somebody know. And so there's a big trust factor, but trust the security team that they have the best interest of the university and our employees and our faculty and our staff. So, and students, sorry. Can't forget the students. So it is, as long as you're transparent and people know what it is that you're doing, you can get people's buy-in that way.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great way to end our conversation today. It's been really a joy to meet you and to talk with you about this article. And as much as I hate to end this great conversation, it's all the time that we have for today.
Great.
Chris, I can't thank you enough for being our guest today. It was a pleasure. I know you, our audience, are interested in learning more about her article. So please click on the links in the description below. Again, that's all for now, everyone. I'm Lisa Cook, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.